I will never forget the day my mother died. It was a Monday afternoon in the summer of 2015. My father, my sisters, and I were stricken with grief. There was so much to do and so many things that needed to be figured out, and we were just at sea. Some of the things Jewish ritual told us what to do, but some required major decisions to be immediately made. Most of those choices would be Dad's. Helping him decide, though, was among the hardest things my sisters or I had ever done. We had to find a cemetery and secure a plot for Mom, which also meant that it was for Dad. He and Mom had discussed this a bit before she passed, but they hadn't finalized anything. I don't think either of them had expected her death to come quite as quickly as it did. We were in shock, we were grieving, and we had to make a choice that seemed monolithic in its importance. Where would Mom be buried? Of course, we won't be the last family that has to make decisions like this one. There are so many families in Israel having to do so right now in a much, much more horrific context. We weren't the first either. The first search for a cemetery and the first burial that we read about in the Torah occurs in this week's Parsha, Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah. Ironically, this Parsha, named for Sarah's life, begins with her death at the age of 137. Midrash tells us that this was a completely unexpected death, that Sarah died of shock, of brokenheartedness, upon hearing the news of the near sacrifice of her beloved son at her husband's hand. Suddenly, Abraham faced a new challenge, burying his wife. Had they planned for this? Had Abraham contemplated where his wife would be buried? The lack of advanced planning must have made this task even more difficult for Abraham. And although the Torah doesn't explicitly state this, it seems clear to me that this process must have carried additional emotional weight, as our forefather knew he was selecting his own final resting place as well as his wife's. I can at least begin to imagine how difficult this must have been for our forefather, because I watched my own father go through a similar journey when selecting my mother's grave. My sisters and I were there to support him, but really we all knew the decision would ultimately be his. He was making that choice not only for his wife, but also for himself. They discussed it to some extent. Mom wanted to be buried in a cemetery that was near water, a place where you could not hear any traffic. And as it turns out, there's a beautiful Jewish cemetery not terribly far from Dad's house that meets these criteria. And as we walked toward the available plots, we saw names of family friends who had predeceased Mom, and we found the perfect spot. So too Abraham found the perfect spot to bury Sarah. Ma'arat HaMachpelah, a cave owned by Ephron, a Hittite. Ephron offered to just give the cave to Abraham as a gift, but our forefather insisted on paying for the burial site. Abraham gave Ephron 400 silver shekels, and the first financial transaction recorded in the Torah was complete. The 20th century European rabbi Beno Jacob explains that this was an exorbitant price, but Abraham was willing to pay it to ensure that he owned a proper place to bury his wife. It was important that Abraham purchase the cave rather than receive it as a gift. This meant that he was able to bury Sarah with the proper kavod. There would never be a question about the cave's provenance, and therefore about Abraham's right to bury Sarah there. And owning the cave meant that it was property of Abraham's descendants for generations to come. Owning the cave also meant that when Abraham died, his burial place was already known to him and to his loved ones. Abraham prepared for his own death in other ways as well. He established a will. Before he died, the Torah tells us he gave gifts to certain family members and then left his entire estate to Isaac, who then came together with his brother Ishmael to bury their father. Unlike my father, the two brothers knew where to bury their dead. I hope that knowledge made their experience of loss a bit easier to deal with. And while Abraham had mourned Sarah's death alone, Ishmael and Isaac mourned together. I think that must have helped. Our forefathers' experiences of mourning were the first steps towards development of the modern Jewish way of dealing with loss. And I know that made my father's experience a little easier. I've learned a lot about Jewish mourning as a student here at JTS. Our rituals, honed by time, are intentional. They're designed to help people like my father in that moment. They're intended to help me when I deal with death in the future professionally as a rabbi, as well as in my personal life. And I know there will be mourning in my future. When I mourn, God willing, I'll be blessed to have family and friends, to have community around me. When my own death comes, and may that be a long time from now, my loved ones will know my wishes and where my cemetery plot will be. It won't be easy. But the knowledge I have gained from Abraham, from Isaac, from Ishmael, and from my own father's experience of mourning have helped me understand better how to prepare my future congregants and myself for the future, for the inevitable deaths of loved ones. Now, even though death is perhaps the only constant in everyone's life, dealing with death, talking about death, witnessing death is never easy. What's harder, though, is avoiding the issue, pretending that death won't happen and we don't have to prepare for it. People will continue to die with no advanced planning. But some of us have taken the time to create wills, powers of attorney, healthcare proxies. We've made sure that people who care about us know our wishes. Our loved ones will weep while they help fulfill those wishes, obviously. I know from my own experience with helping Dad, but also from designating my own power of attorney and signing documents prepared by the estate lawyer. That's inexorably hard. Our friends, the survivors, those who know our wishes, those with whom we've had those impossible conversations, they will bury us, and they will mourn with comfort from their communities. And just as I imagine for Isaac and Ishmael when they buried their father, when my loved ones come together to bury me, may it be many years from now, they will honor my wishes, and they will do what is right. Chayei Sarah was my bar mitzvah parsha, and I'm trying to fathom how 13-year-old me would imagine being here today, just months away from rabbinic ordination, giving this sermon. I'm so grateful to everyone who's helped me on this journey. I've listed most of them in the handout, but there are a few that I want to just mention right now in person. You'd think they'd be rabbis, and for the most part, you'd be wrong. One of my oldest friends, Jason, is here from Dallas. He flew up special for this. Thank you. And I would not be here, I would not be walking this earth today if it were not for my cardiologist, Dr. Kevin Dunsky. Thank you for your kindness and your brilliance and your care and making sure I'm still alive to do this. And of course, I've got some really wonderful teachers, my classmates, and dear friends. I'm so grateful to all of you. I have no words. We'll conclude with Kaddish D'Rabbanan. Yikadal v'yikadash me Rabbah. Be'alma tivrak yurte, Be'amlich malchute. B'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'v'izman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabam avarach la'alam ol'almei al-maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yithalal shmei d'gudsha brichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechamata. Ta'miran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Talmidehon ve'al kol Talmidei Talmidehon ve'al kol man de'askin be'oraita di ve'atra hadein ve'di b'chol atar ve'atar yehei l'chon u'l'chon shlama rabba china v'chista v'rachamin v'chayin arichinu v'zornari v'cha u'mforkona min kadama v'hon v'ishmaya v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya v'chaim tovim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu barachamav ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen.